them.
It's been a while since I've delved into the Shining series, with my past experience being Shining in the Darkness and the original Shining Force. That said, with the series going 11 years without a localization, the same is probably true for a lot of you. You can leave your experience with prior games at the door though, as Shining Resonance hardly resembles my memories of past games. This is something entirely new for both the better and the worse. So Shining Resonance is a localization and remaster of the Japan-only PlayStation 3 game of the same name, though a lot has changed since its debut. Japanese players were plagued with excessive layers of in-game transactions, going as far as to charge the player for continues upon game over. Rest assured, all that is gone in Shining Resonance Refrain. This is the complete package and it looks and runs great on Switch. But what exactly is Shining Resonance? Well, unlike Shining Force, this is not a strategy game. Resonance is an action RPG with a huge focus on narrative. A vast amount of your time is spent listening to visual novel style cutscenes, and impressively, the majority of lines are fully dubbed for this localization, with pretty consistent results. Some characters certainly offer a more convincing performance than others, but the sheer size of this script is rather commendable. But what does that matter if the story being told is not one you'll be invested in? And thankfully that's not quite the case. Shining Resonance tells the story of a battle between two kingdoms. One seeks to prevent a civil war by resurrecting the powerful world dragons, but their morals are clouded. They experiment on humans and seek power at whatever the cost. There's an interesting back and forth with the narrative, where you see and even somewhat sympathise with the characters in the opposition, but of course they go too far in their vision for peace. The game begins in the midst of a rescue for one of the human experiments, Yuma. Yuma is rather special as he maintains the ability to transform into the Shining Dragon, the most powerful of all the world dragons. The power can overwhelm him though, and he's therefore hesitant to use but a slither of the Shining Dragon's power. This works for both the story and a gameplay basis, as while in combat, Yuma is able to transform into the Shining Dragon at will, and as he gradually gains a better grasp of his control, he's able to use more of the Shining Dragon's power in battle. This is a great way of keeping the Shining Dragon as a figure of power without making you overpowered in the process. In the first half of the game, the dragon is unpredictable and can take control away from the player at any time, but this grows and develops as the story does. In truth, Shining Resonance is a game with a small scale. The story doesn't diverge too far from the personal battle between Yuma and the Shining Dragon, and likewise, the world itself only consists of a few small areas with a single town at its centre. It's a rather linear RPG, with areas directly stringing together with a very rare diverging path. This means you'll be running through the same fields, the same caves, and the same wastelands for 30 hours with nothing but narrative and combat to really mix things up. This does succeed in striking a feeling of familiarity and having the lone town feel like a rightful home, but of course at the great cost of variety. The town is by no means sprawling, with practically everything you need, be it a shop or an inn, greeting you immediately. It's more so a hub for side quests. Shining Resonance is from the era of JRPGs, where the budgets of HD development meant a cut in scope, and it really shows. Despite the large script, story elements can often feel static, with even action scenes being played out with just sound effects and sword slashes. Fully animated sequences appear from time to time, but they appear to be pre-rendered from the PlayStation 3 release. There's clearly a lower image quality, but it is very rare that these occur. It's a shame that so much of this game feels small, as the battle system is one area that consistently grows in an exciting way. The core principles are simple. The green ring around your player is essentially their stamina, and you're able to hack and slash at will as long as the ring isn't empty. You're also able to use magic abilities at the cost of MP, and utilise a character-specific break. Breaks aren't often effective on their own, but if they're utilised while an enemy is casting, it'll interrupt their attack and cause them to topple over. The supporting cast of characters also complement each other really well. Essentially, everyone in your party is a Dragoneer, which means they're able to resonate with dragons and use their mystical music to turn the tide of battle. The gauge over on the left here is somewhat of a limit break that grants powerful buffs while often jarringly changing the music. It's a simple battle system in practice, but the depth comes from activities outside of battle. You can customize the properties of all your party members by tuning their weapons. For instance, I can inflict Sonia with a fire property to cause her standard attacks to be strong against grass monsters. There's also a system fairly similar to Final Fantasy VII's Materia, where you can slot little orbs into your weapon to boost your battle stats. Then there's the relationship map, which enhances teamwork. This is a great motivator to check out side quests and really get to know your party outside of battle. For instance, if Kirika shows some romantic elements towards Yuma, I can then use those emotions and strengthen the bond of those two characters. The combat systems are really strong, but they do take a while to truly come into their own. In the opening hours, I was met with some frustrating difficulty spikes that required me to spend some time grinding, something that's made slightly less tedious with the flexibility of the Switch. But as you gain more abilities, battle starts to become a heck of a lot easier, and it got to the point where I was even 10 levels below both field enemies and bosses, and I could still take my way through them using the Shining Dragon paired with a party of healers. That's not to say I never had problems with the difficulty, but I also never had to stop and grind later in the game. The more challenging encounters can easily be topped by stocking up on items. Even though the combat's in real time, you still need to pause to use items, and you can use as many as you want, so your only limitation is how much you can afford. I found myself pausing during combat on a fairly regular basis, as while the Shining Dragon can handle most encounters, you still need good support from your party, and sometimes the AI just isn't up for the task. You can command them to focus on healing or to be defensive or offensive, but sometimes you're best just doing it yourself. Despite her magic meter essentially being full, Kirika would not revive one of our party members, but instead insisted on draining her MP with other, less helpful moves. The AI do this fairly often. They even drain MP on fights with lower level enemies when there's really no need to. When Yuma's controlled by the AI, they never seem to unleash the Shining Dragon, so even if you prefer other characters, it's hard not to keep Yuma at the head of the party. Having a Secret of Mana styled local option would have been a great way to overcome some of the AI frustrations, but as it stands, you'll often be battling with the battle system. There's also one brand new element to Shining Resonance Refrain, and that's unsurprisingly the Refrain mode. It's advised that you tackle this on a second playthrough, and I can absolutely see why. It's still the same game, but two of the game's villains are incorporated into the party, which obviously makes the story material a tad jarring. It's a neat option to play through the game again, but I can't suggest you start with this. With so many RPGs releasing on the Switch this summer, you're not really in short supply of choice, but if you're after something with a little smaller, more personal focus, then Shining Resonance may be just for you. Keep in mind though that such a small focus can also be its undoing in many areas. All in all, I like Shining Resonance. It certainly does not reach its full potential, but not every game needs to have a large sprawling world to be fun. But what do you think of Shining Resonance? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on RPGs and other things gaming too. Until next time, bye!